All right, and while the front, well, after gluing the front together, and while that's setting, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut some lacing, and I'm taking some scraps of my leather here, and I'm going to make a circle or an oval, and this is kind of a quick and dirty way of making cordage or lacing out of a square piece of material. And really, so what I want to do is I just want to kind of cut the edges off of here. And then what I want is probably about a quarter of an inch wide. And I'm just going to eyeball this. And I want to start to cut this in a spiral. And I'll take my time and make sure I'm using the top of the shears here, the scissors, to kind of act as my gauge or my guide as to how wide my lacing is going to be. And so you want to take your time the first time you try this, and be careful not to cut yourself with the scissors, of course. But as you can see, what I'm starting to do is I'm just starting to kind of go around and around and around. I would really want like a perfect circle for this to avoid rough edges, but I'm aware of how the finished piece is going to look, so I'm not so much worried about the edges for this lace. So that's why I'm just making kind of I'm using a kind of an oblong shaped piece of leather. Okay, but this is a cool way of making lacing or cordage from a flat piece of material. And as you see, I'm just gonna continue cutting this around and around. Then what I will do is I'll wet this down and I'll stretch it so that it becomes really straight for me. So just as a tip, how we're going to create lacing for this pouch is you really want to, again, you want a perfect circle if you can make one, but I'm using scrap material, and so I want to just continue to cut this around and around and around until I can't cut anymore. Now another way to do this would be to have like a wood stump and a sharp knife, and you kind of stick it in, and then you pull your leather around it. I don't know if that's a good angle for you to see, but hopefully you get the idea of where the tip here, you would pull this around like this, and that's how you cut your strip. As another way of doing it with a very sharp knife. But scissors are safer, and I don't want to ruin my table by sticking a knife in the table here. Alright, I've gone ahead and I've used some commercial super glue and basically pinned or tacked the front to the side here. Alright, and I'm going to next take my hole punch and punch holes all the way around, about 1/8 of an inch in and about 1/8 of an inch apart all the way around. Yeah, and so that's going to be the next tedious part to this project. And I could have done this on the back side if I wanted to. That would have just been a different sort of design, but I decided to go ahead and for speed, I just went on ahead and just stitched the back without a welt. And then I'm going to I'm going to lace the front part here. So next we're going to cut some lacing, and after let this sit for a minute, then I'm going to cut some lacing, and then we're going to punch holes, and then we'll start lacing this together. So I've taken my hole punch here, and I've punched holes all the way around, and about 1/4 of an inch in, and it's not 1/4, but about 1/8 of an inch in and about 1/8 of an inch apart. And these are just approximate. I was kind of eyeballing it and make sure everything was even and things and stuff like that. So just take your time. So now I have my lacing that I cut out, and I'm going to do double loop lacing around this edge here to give it a nice kind of a pretty braided look. I took some super glue on the very tip of this, and then actually kind of also glued like a piece of paper towel to it, so it's kind of easy to see since I'm working black on black on the camera. And this is not going to be actual video on how to double loop lace, You can actually look that up, and you can find really good instructional videos on that type of lacing for leather working. But I'm going to go ahead and start this out. This is the lacing that I'm going to do. So basically, I'm going to take, I'm not sure if you can see this or not, but I'm going to go ahead and take this stiffened end and use it as a needle and kind of drive this through. Actually, I went through the wrong hole. Go through the first hole and just pull all this lacing through. And one thing I want to mention is the length. There may be questions on how long this should be. I didn't measure this lacing here, but I did kind of fold it once, put a bite in it once, like that, and then took the end, and then now I have like 4 strands here. So I'm taking the 4 strands here, and I'm just kind of loosely laying this out along the edge. And it looks like I'll probably have more than what I'll need for this. So I've got plenty of leftover here on this edge here as a measurement. So just, you know, cut or procure as much lacing as you think you need, and then a little bit more. That's always kind of my rule of thumb for the most part. So I'm gonna go ahead and thread this through the first hole. I'm gonna pull this all the way through. Bear with me. And this is to get it started. And the cool thing about this lacing is you'll want it. The lacing has to be flat in order for this to look right. Okay. So now I kind of come up on the end here, right here. I don't know if you can see that. And I want to lay this flat, and I want the shiny side or the skin side up. I want to kind of just lay this on the outside. I'm holding it with my thumb here on this side. I'm pretty sure you're not going to be able to see this black on black, so I'm just going to try to talk through this. So then I'm making an X, so I'm crisscrossing this over the top, and I'm going to go through the neighboring hole. Let's pull that through. And I want to make sure this lays flat with the shiny side or the skin side up. Leather has a shiny side, and then it has a suede or a rough side, or where the flesh was at when it was on the animal. So I have an X going on here. And so when I come back through the next time, I want to bring my needle through this X or in between, all right? And normally this is done with like a metal needle that's been clamped onto the end of the lacing. And I'm just gonna, since I'm not doing that, I don't have that. I can't force this in through. So I'm kind of loosening up a bit, and then gonna pull everything through that. So this is a little bit time consuming, but the finished product is really nice when it's done correctly. I want to make sure everything lays flat. So I can cinch this down. And then that's coming through like that. Make sure everything is laying flat. And then what I do is just kind of pull this through. I'm actually gonna, so this end here is going to lay on the edge, and I'm going to do my lacing over it. So once I've gotten this work through, then I want to come back around and continue my lacing through the next hole. And then what will happen is that'll create an X that then I go through again, and I keep looping around and go through the X as I continue on. So I'm going to do a couple of passes, but that's how you start. And again, I'm twisting this so that it lays flat. I'm going to find my end here and poke that through the neighboring hole. sure that this doesn't get too twisted. I want this flat. Like that. Okay, so then my next pass will be through the under the X here. So right underneath this. So all right, but again, for a more clear explanation, just look up double loop lacing and leather work, and there'll be a much better explanation for how this is done, and you'll gain a better understanding. I don't have to do this. I could have just sewn it just regular like this, or I could have on the original piece, I could have very well just whipped stitched the edges. So again, I'm kind of doing this to embellish this piece here, this double loop lacing. When it's done, it'll look really pretty. I could just as easily just do some whip stitching all the way around. In fact, that's what I'm going to do when we get to the top flap here on this project here, is I'm going to just whip stitch it around. I'm not going to do double loop lacing all the way. So I'm going to do a couple of passes and then I'll show you what I got.